Hate is a very strong word. I really don't like using it. Hate. Sports fans use it all the time. I hate these guys. I hate that player. I hate that team. And as a figure of speech, that's one thing. I'm at the stage of life where I don't know that I hate anything. It's just not worth harboring that particular feeling or emotion. It's only self-inflicting in terms of the pain that you actually feel, and the person that you hate, the thing that you hate. They have little regard for the fact that you're sitting there in misery based on the fact that they're having some kind of success or they've got something over on you. When it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, though, that's about as close as I could come. There's nothing more favorable than watching America's team get destroyed. I don't even know if they're America's team anymore. We thank them for the cheerleaders. That was a great innovation at the time, elevating the level of cheerleaders and the perception of them to what turned out to be phenomenal heights. But the rest of it you can have. The sanctimonious Jerry Jones. Are we not tired of him? What other owner in sports is the go-to guy immediately after a game, and they're asking him, "Hey, Jerry, what about that call on 3rd and 10? Do you think that puppeteer coach Mike McCarthy of yours was responsible for that, or was that the offensive coordinator? Who's getting fired?" What other owner? You ever see any other owner of any other team being interviewed, having his own talk show, where and then he gets on the guys that are on the show. He starts telling them they're going to be fired if they continue with the line of questioning, where they're asking, "So Jerry, I know it was a tough loss. I mean, they're throwing softballs like they were Eddie Feiner at this guy." So the insufferable nature of Jerry Jones. What one good reason to hate the Cowboys? And is there anything that is more pleasing when you're watching TV than seeing the shots of Jerry just in agony in the booth there with Stephen Jones, who, I mean, if there isn't a blatant example of nepotism in an organization, it would be that. What are Stephen Jones's qualifications for being the assistant GM? And Jerry, as general manager, has been nothing but a disaster. Well, one of my favorite things you see about the Cowboys is when you see that picture of some hot babe in a Cowboys cheerleader outfit, and they say, "Well, here are the Cowboy cheerleaders from 2024," and then they have some old bag that's pushing a shopping cart, and she's wearing a terribly ill-fitting and ill-advised cowboy cheerleader outfit, and then the label is the caption is, and here's the cheerleading squad from the last time they won a Super Bowl. It's been a long time, right? He had it made in the shade, but he couldn't get along with Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones. And then the series, like I said, of puppeteer coaches is enough reason. Dave Campo was my favorite. He was actually with Jimmy. He was an import from Jimmy Johnson's University of Miami staff. Nice guy. We got to know him a little bit when he was here in town. But as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, could you be any more miscast? I think only when you had Tony Sparano after being known for always settling for field goals, even going for him on first down when he was at the half-yard line just to put 3 points on the board, became the offensive coordinator of the New York Jets. But that's a whole nother subject, the disastrous decisions that are made by the Jets front office. Anyway, it was just great yesterday watching the Dallas Cowboys lose and watching Jerry cry after the ball game. Like I said, I don't know that I hate the Cowboys, but that was probably the most entertaining thing. The Cowboys going down 27-21 to the Falcons yesterday and falling into yet another nosedive position with regard to the playoffs, postseason possibilities. And you almost go into Jim Moore on that. Playoffs? What, are you kidding me? Love watching them lose. Now, if you like betting the games, and it was a good day for favorites yesterday in the National Football League, basketball fans, it's that time of the year again as well. And the NBA is back. From the opening tip-off to buzzer beaters, BetOnline has you covered with the best odds, the biggest promotions, and live in-game betting on all of your favorite teams. Even if you hate the Cowboys, right? They couldn't cover the point spread, which was another negative on their resume from yesterday. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the game itself. And it isn't just the NBA. BetOnline has odds on everything from football, MLB playoffs, NHL, and with Election Day tomorrow, they have political props as well. Head to the website today to get in on all the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline. The game starts here. Yeah, it was ugly yesterday, that Cowboy game. We haven't. I mean, it was as pleasing as watching Debbie Does Dallas. during puberty while watching that game yesterday and seeing Nigerian agony in the booth. All right, a wild day around the NFL. The game that we were tracking here in South Florida, and we didn't have a great week with our handicappers. We're hoping to bounce back this week. We didn't bury any bookies. The chalk players buried them yesterday. I believe the final tally going into tonight's Monday night affair, where the Kansas City Chiefs, undefeated Chiefs, are laying 9 points at home to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do they have a little bit of a spark? Cover 9 points. The Chiefs have been eking out victories, doing the thing that the cliche applies to. Well, good teams find a way to win. Bad teams find a way to lose. You see a lot of that. But in the Chiefs' case, they haven't been juggernauts by any stretch of the imagination. Mahomes not having a particularly good season. Remember early in the year, they thought that Travis Kelce was out getting blasted all the time with Taylor Swift. And all of a sudden, he had become a shot fighter, one of those deals where from one fight to the next, he looks like complete garbage. Then he bounced back, started to put up some decent numerology. Was making 10-plus catches a game for a couple of games and became a factor in the offense. But Mahomes hasn't been razor sharp in this 2024 season. So 9 points, a lot to lay there. Well, we'll get into that. But yesterday, we're tracking a game, and this one was one of the few covers by the underdogs. As I said, I believe it depends where you had that Patriot game, which was probably one of the most boring games in the history of the National Football League. Man, this was throwback shit, where the Patriots were doing battle with the Tennessee Titans. And I have a friend, Ron Borges, was a big-time boxing writer and a long-time writer for the Boston Globe. He was posting on social media, "This is an atrocity. This is the worst game I've ever seen. This is setting the NFL back a half a century, maybe even more." But it ended up being pretty exciting. And if you had any involvement with the point spread in that game, it was enough to drive you crazy. We always talk about the dagger being the sword of Damocles. And that game either went off 3 or 3 and a hook. What a big difference it turned out to be. Now, they get a miracle play at the end to send the game into overtime. The Patriots are trailing 17-10. Drake May throws a complete desperation pass, loops it into the end zone, and it's caught for a touchdown on a 4th down. So the game is either going the other way completely, or you're going to see overtime. Then in overtime, Tennessee organized. I mean, they just run the ball. They ram it right down the Patriots' throats. And you're thinking they're going to drive it in for a touchdown. They ended up having to settle for a field goal. So they go up 3 right there on a number. In my case, it turned out to be a push, but for many, it turned out to be a score, getting that 3 and a hook. But that was a wild game because you had no business getting to that point, as the Patriots were winning early, and Tennessee then seemed to have assumed command of the game. That final desperation drive sends the game into OT, and then the stupid overtime rules that they have, where if a team scores a touchdown on the initial possession, the other team never gets the ball. I thought they were supposed to fix that. Where's Roger Goodell on that? I mean, we have a simple theory about that, and that is, and a lot of people have told me I'm crazy, but I really believe that the NFL overtime should be contested as a continuation of the game itself. So if a team has a ball and it's 3rd and 7 and they're at the other team's 27-yard line, when overtime starts, that's where the play begins. It's 3rd and 7, the other team's 27-yard line, and the game resumes from that spot. That would seem like the fairest way to determine overtime. They make it in an extra period, and then for the postseason, they've amended the rule. But in a regular season, they have this cockamamie rule, which if a team scores a touchdown, the game's over, and the other team never gets a chance to have the ball. This rule was instituted to try and correct what would seem to be a grave injustice, where the coin toss is probably going to decide the fate of the outcome of the game. And in this case, it didn't, because the Patriots ended up getting the ball first. Tennessee executes a drive. They didn't have as much incentive to score the touchdown at that point. But now that they've gotten the ball, the field goal was going to win the game for them. But at the same time, you put a lot of things into play when you're trusting your field goal kicker to ice a ball game at that stage, what was an interesting aspect of the Dolphins game that we were tracking. Tua Tagovailoa, wow, you talk about deja vu all over again. Against the Buffalo Bills in week number 2, what does he do? Late in the ball game, he's trying to sustain a drive. He goes hurtling forward and then dives head first for the first down marker. In that case, he runs into Damar Hamlin in week number 2, and the rest is history. People are talking about, well, he's got to retire. He's finished. He's speaking in Hebrew. Sits out, goes through all of the protocol, comes back. Many people thinking that this was foolish on his part. And then here he is in a similar situation against the Buffalo Bills late in the game and needs to scramble. He has to ease his way out of the pocket. He's running forward, needs about 6 yards for a first down, dives forward head first, and your heart is in your throat thinking, no, not again, kid. Because another concussion at this stage, and you're thinking that this is not something that you probably should continue with. So he manages not to get hit there, and they put the tying score on the board, only to have the Buffalo Bills and this guy Tyler Bass. I mean, imagine you got Tyler Bass coming out there for a 61-yard field goal. If you had the Dolphins on the money line, you're thinking, yes, we're going to overtime, and all is going to be well. We're going to have a legitimate shot to maybe cash a big ticket here. With the Bills as 6-point favorites in the game, money line had to be what? Somewhere around 2.5, 3-1, maybe even higher. So what happens? Tyler Bass, who they were trying to so desperately to get rid of this guy, it was amazing. They wanted him gone. They were, I think they had the Grammaticas coming out there to the practice facility to try out for the team. They were so unfaithful or had so little faith in Tyler Bass to consistently perform. He'd already doinked an extra point, which they managed to overcome by going for 2 later on and being successful on it. And so this game's coming down to the wire here. They trot him out there in regulation for a 61-yard field goal try. And what does he do? Holy Pete Gogolak, I mean, right through the uprights and ends up winning the game. So that was a wild finish. And then, of course, as we said, I mean, in a million years, you couldn't have anticipated how exciting it got at the end of that New England game, which was an atrocity, New England and Tennessee, leading up to it. All right, we got touched up a little bit last week. We're not afraid to give you the negative report card here on Bury Your Bookie. That's what we do. We're very straightforward. Mike Jones, who joins us on Thursday, had our only winning week at 2-1. He hit Thursday night, that mystery line we had talked about, where the Jets somehow are favored in their ball game over the Houston Texans, who had a 6-2 record coming in. Couple of things were in play there that you might take into consideration on any Thursday night game, and that is the team traveling, especially if they're going west to east, just routinely comes up lame in that spot. So you had the hit with the Jets there as that line held up, and the Jets rallied in the second half, looked real good. Now all the Jet fans are optimistic that, well, you know what, maybe we can turn this thing around. Good luck with that. I mean, 3-6 is somewhat of a burial at this point, but we'll see how they do. But they prevailed for Mike Jones. He had the Chargers and Cleveland, and hit that one as well with the Chargers. We're laying like 1.5 against the Cleveland Browns. A factor to consider immediately, because anybody that became enamored with the Browns' victory behind Jameis Winston's outstanding ball game against the mighty Baltimore Ravens, who were on a roll, a 5-game winning streak, and they go down straight up to the spread and on the money line in that game against the Cleveland Browns, where Winston looks great and he throws the late touchdown pass, a thing of beauty, and you're thinking, yeah, this guy's capable of doing some really highlight material type of things. But the other side as a pro, especially with Jameis, was, wow, the reverse is about to happen. If ever a guy was in a position where a bounce could be anticipated, that's what happened. And so Cleveland gets trounced there by the Los Angeles Chargers, who quietly are doing okay with Jim Harbaugh coaching. You're not hearing a lot about Harbaugh. You heard a lot more about him when he was coaching Michigan than you have so far in the pros. Maybe on the West Coast it's different, but on the East Coast you rarely. Well, the Chargers, I don't even think they have fans in L.A., right? Because when you watch a game in Los Angeles where the Chargers are at home, where they share the stadium with the Rams, whose owner built the stadium, and the Chargers are what? They're like squatters in there. And the other team always has all of the seats that are seen when they pan the crowd. And you're thinking, wow. And even you can hear it in the reaction. The Chargers score, it's silent. Say the Packers score, they're playing them on the road, and there's a zillion fat guys from Green Bay eating kielbasa and loving the fact that they have sunshine. And sure enough, they dominate the crowd in the stadium. So I don't even know if the Chargers have fans, but they did prevail, and you're not hearing a lot about them, and have been decent against the spread so far this year. And then a lot of people got waxed in this ball game, up 22-0. Philadelphia and Jacksonville. Up 22-0, and Jacksonville is doing absolute zero. I mean, they can't get out of their own way. 3-and-outs, turnovers, turning the ball over on downs. I mean, they could do nothing in this ball game. They're down 22-0 to the Philadelphia Eagles, and of course, Eagles laying 7.5. This is why people say never lay points. Eagles laying 7.5, dominate the game pretty much from start to finish. They did have to stave off a late rally there as Jacksonville had a shot in the end zone, an interception with about a minute and a half to go in the ball game. Ultimately iced it for Philadelphia, but the fact that they were in that position at all, vulnerable, and then failing to cover the 7 and a hook, that was the lone loss there for our buddy Mike Jones. A couple of our other guys, they didn't fare so well. Troy West had his first losing week on the program. Georgia failed to cover. They got off to a very slow start in their game against Florida, the Gators, in the world's biggest cocktail party. And wow, when are people going to believe in Indiana? Now ranked inside of the what are they? Just outside the top 10? No, in the top 10. They're ranked 8th in the country right now. Indiana, a juggernaut offensively, and Troy West went against them with Michigan State, and ended up taking one on the chin there. And then he was accurate. Bengals and the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders in complete free fall at this point in the season. I think they've lost 5 in a row. They started firing some of their offensive guys. Offensive coordinator gone. A couple of assistants are reading the classifieds today. And the Bengals looking sharp as they head into next week's battle, which should be one of the marquee matchups on the slate in the National Football League as they take on the Baltimore Ravens. And the early line on that game has the Ravens, and this is a Thursday night game, so it's a quick turnaround. Ravens favored by 5 and a hook. Ravens coming off an outstanding performance against the Broncos. We talked about in the NFL, too, how things happen in spurts. And the Broncos had become a little bit of a darling for people trying to beat the point spread as they were covering spreads and winning games outright week after week. But they ran into a Ravens brick wall yesterday and got shellacked, getting 8.5 points. So they were nowhere to be seen. And we've been talking about this. They were 1-7 against the spread going into this week's game against the New Orleans Saints, who absolutely suck. You can't imagine that Dennis Allen is going to last the season the way the Saints have been underperforming this year. They get Derek Carr back. Every reason to believe that they should have no problem dispensing with the lowly Carolina Panthers, who now have Bryce Young back at quarterback, which you would think would be enough of a negative right there to say no amount of points is enough for me to back the Panthers. So what do the Panthers do? And I think the outlay of points was something relatively marginal considering. Now, we know New Orleans has not been playing well, but the Panthers have been atrocious and look like they might go the rest of the season without winning a game, especially with Young back in there. But they win the game outright, and that destroyed a lot of people yesterday too. But very, very overwhelming the amount of favorites that prevailed. I think yesterday, like I said, 10-3 teams that were favored in the ball game ended up covering the point spread. And overall, 11-3 if you throw in that Thursday night Jet game. So that brings us to tonight, Kansas City and Tampa Bay. The Baker Mayfield story is a good story, isn't it? I mean, if you're just going by gut feel in this game, Kansas City been eking out these victories all season long. I mean, did they run away and hide tonight? 9's a big cover, even though they're at home. They have covered large spreads, and they've actually been very favorable against the point spread, in spite being heavily favored all week long, as any defending Super Bowl champion would be. There was an old betting principle, and I don't know that it's worked the last couple of years, but that if you bet against the defending Super Bowl champion in the ensuing season every week against the spread, you would be way ahead lifetime. I'm not sure if that trend hasn't changed a little bit. It certainly isn't working this year with the Kansas City Chiefs, who have been covering routinely. They may be 5-2 against the spread so far this year, which, as I said, is surprising because they keep grinding out victories and managing nonetheless to be not only undefeated on the straight up record, but and leading the league in that category, but also been effective against the point spread. So, not a big outlay. I'd probably take a shot with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if I was looking at that game. All right, a lot of other stuff going on, too. College basketball begins tonight. And one of the great things about college basketball is you can go on and win a championship while sustaining a few losses, especially early in the season. You get those great tournaments where you have the heavyweights going against each other early on and get some kind of indication as to who's going to be prominent later on in the year, and a giant slate of games going tonight. So if you're a college basketball fan, this is certainly nirvana for you, as I'm looking at a full column here of betting opportunities, including a couple of games that involve those so-called heavyweights going against each other. As you have Texas and Ohio State and Las Vegas, one of the tournament games going tonight, and a couple of other attractive matchups. Although it does appear that if you're a chalk player, you're going to be laying a lot of wood tonight. As here are the teams in the underdog column, just at the top of the chart here: Fordham, Denver, Missouri State, Morehead State, Manhattan, Tennessee Tech, Texas Southern. Do you see a pattern there? I mean, the favorites in those games are St. John, Stanford, Butler, Louisville, Maryland, Georgia, Xavier, Villanova. It's definitely a cupcake city for some of these teams coming out to shoot. But you will see some great matchups early in the year, and maybe good to tread lightly and get a feel for it. Although I'm sure there are people that are very confident college basketball bettors that, as I said, are salivating over the possibilities that are happening tonight. College football, interesting over the weekend. You had to feel good. We were talking about this game quite a bit last week on the show. And that was to what extent do you have to consider the Cristobal factor if you're betting the now number 4 ranked University of Miami Hurricanes, who have an offense that is number 1 in the country. Cam Ward, among the leading candidates. I don't know if he wins the Heisman, but he didn't do anything to hurt his chances this past week as the Hurricanes took on Duke, and their former head coach, one of their former head coaches, Manny Diaz, who had gotten off to a very good start with the Duke Blue Devils, not necessarily a program that was going to scare anybody, but he was doing very well and had favorable results, and ended up 11 points in the third quarter against a Hurricane football team that you felt was directly being and horrendously impacted by the Cristobal factor, where Mario Cristobal is among the worst game day coaches that you will ever see, having committed such a cardinal sin that should have been a loser leaves town episode. We've talked about it many, many times when he didn't take a knee in a game last year that the Hurricanes desperately needed. And the guy fumbles a football, and he ends up losing when he was up 10 points with like a couple of minutes to go in the game. Not even like a minute to go in the game. Inexcusable, immediate dismissal for a head coach. So we're thinking about that now. You're getting 20.5 in that ball game. Well, a recommendation, of course, this was a little painful for me, was to bet Duke. You're getting 20.5 points, and you're up 11 in the third quarter. So essentially, you're up 31.5 points with a quarter and a half to go in a ball game, and you end up fucking losing. That that's a tough beat. And once again, you have to salute the people that make these lines at 20 and a hook. And the Hurricanes ended up prevailing by 22, right? 53-31. But wow, that was a wild one that we were watching. And then there were any number of interesting results, as we alluded to. But nonetheless, you still get the picture that the national championship hunt is somewhat wide open. Oregon, number 1 in the country. Georgia stays at number 2 in spite of their early struggles. Once again, they look very lethargic coming out of the gate against the Florida Gators. What are you going to say about James Franklin at Penn State? What happened? You hate to label a guy as a loser because he never comes through in big spots. I don't really like to think of Aaron Judge as a failure because he's been abysmal at best in the postseason after posting just brilliant numbers. I mean, this year all the way through, and the year before, incredible for a guy to post these kind of power numbers and then hit for an average as well, and do the other things that he does well, which it's not like he's Mickey Mantle when he came in his rookie season in terms of being fleet of foot, but usually does a great job in the outfield also. He's not a stiff out there. It's not like you got Jim Hickman out there in center field for the 62 Mets. This guy's usually got a glove, but postseason failures, they're very, very unfortunate. And you hate to label a guy as a bust because of that. But in big games, if you're a college football coach, it's one thing to be beating up on Lafayette and Louisiana Tech. But if you're the Penn State football coach, can you really be 1-13 in your career at Penn State and keep the job when you continually lose to Ohio State and now 1-13 against teams ranked in the top 5? James Franklin, that's a pattern. I'm not a trend guy, but that's a pattern that is very, very difficult to ignore. Nonetheless, Penn State stays in the top 10. Miami now ranked 4th, Ohio State number 3, Texas, Penn State, Tennessee, Indiana, which has been a degenerate darling favorite here on the show, BYU and Notre Dame round out the top 10 there. And we do have a couple of interesting things also in the NHL. I could have never anticipated this. I don't know. Do we have some puckheads out there watching Bury Your Bookie? Because Winnipeg, they have one guy. What, Connor? Is that their best player, Connor? Because I couldn't name you another guy on the Winnipeg Jets. I don't even often remember that they're in the NHL, Winnipeg. They were disbanded. They came back like a Michigan franchise. So last year, they weren't bad. They ended up with 95 points. They were 8th overall in the West, the Winnipeg Jets. And some people gave them, maybe a little bit of a shot of doing something in the postseason. But they're off to an 11-1 start. Pretty incredible. I don't know if the bookmakers have caught up with them yet. They've been just absolutely great. Off to an 8-1 start. And then in the NBA, which pretty wide variety of offerings tonight, including the Suns and the 76ers. I've been debating that one. I don't know if I'm willing to lay 6.5 points in the NBA, but no Embiid again. You're going to have Paul George coming back for the 76ers, finally making his debut. I don't know how effective he's going to be. The Suns have been playing good basketball. They're at home against a 76er team that is one of the worst against the spread. 1-4 so far this season against the spread. I'm thinking about laying at 6.5 with the Phoenix Suns, who have been playing some really good basketball so far. Off to a hot start, the Cleveland Cavaliers. The bookies haven't caught up with them in the NBA, so I hope you guys are cashing there. They're 7-0 outright and 7-0 against the spread. They've covered the spread in every single outing so far this year. So that's a trend to watch and see if it perpetuates itself. Toronto, surprisingly, 6-1 against the spread. These are the best teams early portion of the season. Golden State wasn't expected to do much. Looked like they were starting to dismantle this team. How much does Draymond Green left have on the lifespan there as an NBA top-notch NBA player? I think he's already fallen off that level last couple of years. Klay Thompson is now shooting the rock elsewhere, and Steph Curry. How long can he keep carrying the load there? But they've been somewhat Cinderellas for degenerates. 5-1 against the spread, and OKC at the top. At the bottom of the NBA, Atlanta, Trae Young and company, 1-6 to the point spread so far. Minnesota's off to a horrible start at 1-5. Milwaukee in total disarray. The New York fans and the New York media thinks that New York teams are going to get everybody. So the latest story I just read was that Giannis, now the Knicks are in play for Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is completely, just delusional about the fact that, he's in such disarray with the Milwaukee Bucks that I don't know that the Knicks fans are delusional or the press, but does he possibly? How could he become a New York Knick after they just acquired Karl Anthony Towns? But supposedly they're in play. The Heat have coveted this guy forever, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and probably would do just about anything to get him. I don't know how available he's going to be, but Milwaukee off to a horrible start for degenerate gamblers, 1-5 against the spread. Unless you're going against them, of course, then they're a godsend. And as I said, Philadelphia always is rounding out the bottom of the list. But I'm going to go ahead and take a shot. Suns -6.5. I'll probably live to regret it over the Philadelphia 76ers to have some action tonight. And tempted to take the points with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over the Kansas City Chiefs, who have been just barely eking out these victories. All right, I hope you guys had a lot of luck. We were a combined 6-9 last week. The professor got touched up on Saturday after a brilliant pick on Friday night of USF. Going against Florida Atlantic University seems to be something that you can count on. I don't know what kind of load they're going to have to carry this week, but their defense is horrendous, and University of South Florida after being kind of shaky throughout the ball game, I ended up running away with that thing and easily covering 2 and a hook. Professor took it on the chin after that, like I said. So a 6-9 week last week. We'll try and make amends. Scotty M will join us tomorrow. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Get out there and vote, everybody. I didn't do any political props. I'm just have my fingers crossed that I am sending in my ballot on the right side of things and gets the support from around the country as well on a few very critical issues here, not only in the state of Florida, but certainly nationally. So get out there and vote, whatever your opinion is. We respect it, and make sure that it counts. Make sure that your vote matters. So tomorrow's the day, and we'll find out. All of this not. How many people are going to miss the political ads on TV? Probably no one. I would think would be the response. All right, everybody, bury your bookie. Couple of things tonight. Going against the grain, against the chalk there with the Chiefs. That'll, like I said, that's kind of a tenuous pick just to have some action. And taking a shot with the Phoenix Suns, who once again destroy the Philadelphia 76ers at home with Durant, Booker, and Beal having big ball games all the way through. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in. For the people at BetOnline, NoFilter.net, and Greenlight Ventures, I'm Jeff DeForrest, hoping everybody has a good shot to bury your bookie.